Coming up on the FSR Sarcfighter podcast, another major step forward for the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research.
So we're very excited, very honored to receive this award, and it's a reflection of the entire community.
FSR joins an elite group at the top of the rare disease pyramid.
It's so exciting this year. What they decided to do, John, is to have a panel on Capitol Hill as part of Rare Disease Week, which is the last week of February.
This is the Sarcfighter podcast, living with sarcoidosis and other rare diseases. Here's your host, John Carlin.
Hi, this is episode 157 of the FSR Sarcfighter podcast. I'm your host, John Carlin. The date of this recording is February 6th, 2026. There's quite a lot happening in my life and with FSR right now. I want to focus mostly today on FSR, which has earned a prestigious honor that speaks to the success and the leadership of our organization. And in just a few minutes, Mary McGowan, who is the CEO, will be joining me here to talk more about this amazing honor, how FSR received it, and what it means going forward for all of us. And when I talk about hope, which is something that I often do here on the podcast, and all of us needing a reason to be optimistic, well, this is it. This is a great example of how people are working for all of us to achieve results, to get our name out there, to keep the ball rolling, as it were, and to make sure that nobody forgets the word sarcoidosis. And these people, you're getting the ear of the right people. That's all I can say. People who can provide funding, horsepower, which is a word that I love, to the cause, and just, in my mind, added credibility to this organization in particular. And if you have to be stuck with a rare disease like many of us are, and those of you listening to the podcast are, this is at least you know that the people who are trying to work to better our lives are being successful in terms of the organization and the strength of the organization, the magnitude, the legitimacy, all of those things. So I'm very excited that Mary will be joining me here to share this great news, and that'll be coming up in just a few minutes. Meanwhile, I do want to share some information from my personal life, and I know this is a bit of a downer, but I've always been very straightforward with the people who listen to this show, and keeping you posted on things that are going on with me. And this is bad, but it's also good. I'm not doing a very good job explaining this. I want to share with you that my mother passed away last week. So that's the bad news, obviously. She passed away peacefully at home at 91 years old, and this was not unexpected. She'd been under hospice care for a long time, and my 91-year-old father had been tending to her every single day, and really, really taking amazing care of my mom. But her passing was long anticipated. She was in quite a lot of pain toward the end, and I'm glad that she is out of pain right now. And I can't even tell you exactly what the cause of death might have been, but I think as much as it can be for anybody, let's just say it was old age, right? And I think that if you have to pass away, that's the best way that any of us could hope for, right? So anyway, my folks moved around a lot when I was very young, and they settled in a tiny community in central New York, generally outside Utica, New York, and which is a smaller city, but it's about halfway between Syracuse and Albany, which are cities that people might recognize more readily. But the name of this little town is Salisbury Center. It's just a dot on the map, and on Sun Maps, it's not even there at all. But I want to share I want to share some successes from my mom's life. I got a lot of inspiration. My mom's name was Elaine Carlin. And when it came to community leadership and activities, outside being just fantastic with the family, my mom, after I got out of college, or maybe I was in college, I lose track, but she stopped being so much of a homemaker, and she ran for the position of town clerk, which is an elected position. And she won it, and she had it for 14 years. And so essentially, she's running the town. My mother is running the town. And I never saw her as anything other than mom, but she graduated from William and Mary and had a degree in education and economics. But she taught for a few years before I was born. But then, there's me and my sisters, and she raised us. She was mom. That's it. So all of a sudden, she gets this itch to put her background to work, which is something that was pretty well disguised to me when I was growing up. I always thought mom didn't want to work. She had plenty to do, and this was back in the day when moms were primarily moms. They made breakfast and lunch and took care of us, made dinner and took care of my dad, and that was it. So now she's the town clerk, and for 14 years she ran the town. And she had to run for re-election every couple of years and won. I think probably most of the time there wasn't even anybody challenging her. But she would sit there with the town council and help guide the decisions, and it was quite a thing. And then there was something else in our town. Years and years ago, Salisbury Center had 7 hotels right in the middle of town. And it was a logging and mining center in the southern Adirondack Mountains. And there was a huge fire, and almost all of those structures burned down and were never rebuilt. But there was one structure right in the middle of town that survived all of that, and it was a house that was built in 1805 by a guy named Augustus Frisbee, and I believe that he is the man who created Frisbee pie plates, like an aluminum pie plate, from which eventually the Frisbee disc was derived. So somebody must have picked up a pie plate back in the day. I'm imagining this, and they started flinging it to each other, kind of a disc-shaped dish that wouldn't break if it hit the ground. And then over time, anyway, so today we have the Frisbee, and my sense is that there's a link between the Frisbees that we throw around today and Augustus Frisbee, the man who built this house right in the center of Salisbury Center, New York. So at any rate, this house had fallen into disrepair. It was an eyesore in the middle of town. It had been converted into a very bad duplex, so an apartment on either side of it. And at the time, it was right across from the post office, right next door to the library, and the town was going to tear it down. But my mom, in conjunction with a local legislator, figured out a way that the town, which I guess owned it because of the lack of taxes having been paid, the town sold it to the Historical Society for $1. And my mother took over the project of renovating this old structure. And I can remember being like between my freshman and sophomore year in college and going in there with a sledgehammer and helping to tear down the walls that didn't belong there anymore. The whole idea was to return this house to its original interior footprint. Like, you knew where the walls were that were original, and you knew where the ones that were there just because they were part of making this thing into a duplex over the years. Again, this house was built in 1805. So I was involved in some of the very early demolition, but it would take over a decade to get this house looking like anything that wasn't an eyesore. That had old, ugly, dirty colored asphalt shingles on the outside, which was a kind of siding that was popular for years. That was replaced with the original wooden siding, and then it was stained, and then they put the windows back in, and eventually, with the help of lots and lots of volunteers, many of whom my mom rallied, eventually they converted this place into a museum. And so today it is a museum, and if you are driving up into the southern Adirondacks, you can go through Salisbury Center, and you can stop at the 1805 Frisbee House, and you can tour. Usually there's a new exhibit every summer. It's closed in the winter. I mean, winter in Salisbury is 4 feet of snow just about every winter. But in the summer it's open and the tourists come through, and you can do it. And the other big attraction in Salisbury is there's an original covered bridge over Spruce Creek as well. So you've got the covered bridge and you've got the Frisbee House, and if you're moving on up through Route 29 into the Adirondacks, you can stop at the Frisbee House. But the point is that my mother spearheaded all of that. And she, between being the town clerk and between the very active historical society and all of that, you can see a lot of what my mother accomplished. And that was one of the guiding forces in my life as I was a young man, and growing up, and then just seeing how a person interacted with their community. And my dad has many similar accolades, but today we're talking about my mom. It's just it's something that's really guided me. And so while I am sorry to share with you the news of my mother's passing, I am thankful for the opportunity to talk about my mom and her accomplishments and her contributions to the greater good. And she was a quilter, and she made quilts for all of us, and my kids, who are her grandkids, and they loved those quilts so much they took them to college, and then they came home from college. And my middle son Ben received a quilt from Mom that had a very famous quilting pattern called a bear paw. And then years ago, he made a barn quilt for my mom in the bear paw design, a huge one, actually. And we put it on top of the minivan, and we drove it from Virginia all the way up to New York with these two big, huge pieces of plywood on top of the car, and presented it to my mom. And now it's become sort of a landmark in Salisbury. It's on the side of the barn. My folks had 50 acres. My dad still lives there. And there's a beautiful barn behind the house, and at one point it was a dairy barn, but now it's just a kind of a glorified garage. And my dad keeps some tractors in there, but they're just toys. But on the side of that barn is this barn quilt and the bear paw design, which that just gives you an idea how much those quilts meant to my kids and to me. And so, and the other thing that I'll just share with my mom about my mom is that there was a day when I was 10 years old. We were living in Massachusetts at the time, and there were I was a kind of a typical boy, and I would see this large garter snake, which is a non-venomous snake that lived in a garage. And that house, by the way, was built in the 1740s and had a rich history. But there was a stone foundation around the garage on the property, and I would see this snake, and I would try to catch it, and it would slither into the stones. And I was just this 10-year-old boy who was determined that he was going to catch this snake. And one day, while I was waiting for the school bus, there it was sitting in the sun, and I grabbed it. And it was every bit of 3 feet long, and I was so proud of myself. I go running up to the door. I knock on the door because my hand's full, and I'm holding up this snake, and my mom comes to the door, and she looks at me, and she slams the door. And I was like, "But Mom, I finally caught this snake." I had no idea how scary that must have been to see the snake, which I think I tried to put it in a box and keep it, and it got out, and it lasted about a day, and I'm sure the snake went back and had a very happy life in the stones around the foundation on the garage. But anyway, we're going to have a celebration of life for my mom, and I'll probably will share the snake story. It's one that's just stuck in my mind for all these years. I had no idea that my mother would be so scared of that snake. Thank you so much for letting me share a little bit of my mother's history. I really do appreciate it, and it's again, I know it's sad, but this is the time to do that, and it's important to me to honor her by making sure her contributions to my life and the greater good are mentioned. Okay, just a small bit of a transition here before we get to the big news of the day, which is coming from Mary McGowan. But I have been keeping you updated on the sad tale of my ruptured Achilles tendon, and good news, as of this week, I am out of the walking boot. I can tell you, so as I'm speaking today, this is the 5th day since I've been able to take the boot off, so I've been doing my best to walk around in regular shoes, and it really feels weird. The strength in my left leg is basically nada. The area around this incision is very sore, but I've started physical therapy. I'm doing my exercises, and hopefully soon I will be walking without a limp. So anyway, that's just the latest update on my Achilles, but I did promise to keep you updated on that, and that's that. Way too much about me today, but I did have to share. Thank you for letting me go on a bit about my mom. And coming up, the big news, Mary McGowan joins me to reveal a big new honor for FSR.
A zombie, just feeding and stumbling.
Hi, I hope you're enjoying the Sarc Fighter podcast. You may be wondering, what can I do to help? How can I be a part of the sarcoidosis solution? It's simple. Make a donation to KISS, Kick In to Stop Sarcoidosis. 100% of the money goes to the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. Look for a link in the show notes of the Sarc Fighter podcast. Welcome back to the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast. Joining me today is the CEO of FSR, Mary McGowan. And Mary, you have a big announcement to make, a big award.
I do, John, and thank you for everybody who's listening in. FSR is just so thrilled to be one of the 4 who received the very esteemed Rare Voice Award from the Every Life Foundation for the work that we've been doing on behalf of the entire community, and actually on behalf of the entire nation, with regards to breaking down barriers to clinical trial enrollment for those who are interested in enrolling in clinical trials and being part of medical research. So we're very excited, very honored to receive this award, and it's a reflection of the entire community and the engagement from the community to get us to this point to be the recipient of this award.
Yeah, the Rare Voice Awards. So you will have the opportunity, or you and members of the team, you're going to Washington, D.C. to accept this award in February?
Yes, we're really excited. And actually, Every Life Foundation made a change. They used to have an awards gala where the awardees would come and receive their award. And so exciting this year, what they decided to do, John, is to have a panel on Capitol Hill as part of Rare Disease Week, which is the last week of February, to hear from the awardees in much more detail through conversations and through really being able to share the story about the award and what led to the award. So this is going to be a very new way to highlight the awardees, and we're just so excited to be part of that and to have all of the other rare disease organizations in the room who can also hopefully learn from some of the awardees about the ways that they got to this point with their community and the work that they were doing, and honor all of us at the same time.
Outstanding. So let's back this out a little bit here. There's all of these rare diseases out there, and every one of them, well, I won't say every one of them, but most of them have an organization that represents them and their interests and tries to accomplish what we are doing at FSR. And somehow the cream always rises to the top, and lo and behold, that's us. So, what do you think led to our selection?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, what led to it were the patients, right? We had put out a survey, and this is why we put out surveys to patients, is to learn about the lived experience of living with sarcoidosis and to learn about some of the barriers that they are experiencing in their care or in medical research. And in this case, it was a survey that we sent out. We had over 400 responses to this survey that talked specifically about the barriers to enrolling in clinical trials. And it was through the learnings that we were able to put together some really important information and share it with the committees that were on this campaign called Ignore No More, to really take a deep dive through key opinion leaders thought workshops and through focus groups of patients to take a deep dive into this data and to bring it to Capitol Hill through a congressional briefing, through 40 Hill visits, through a 60-page white paper, and finally through a letter to the Department of Labor that says, hey, we have all these patients. This is a significant barrier for them to enroll in clinical trials. And in America, we should not have to choose entering into medical research studies, right, for ourselves and for future generations, or losing our jobs. And so with that, we were able to get a 6-page response that now has changed that. And we are now, as a nation, supporting those who enroll in clinical trials by protecting their jobs. And this affects basically 60 million people who are eligible today for Family Medical Leave Act leave from their positions, from their jobs.
Yeah. So, and all of that came from little old FSR. Amazing.
All of that came from the patients of FSR, the sarcoidosis patients who, again, John, took the time to fill out. It was a 52-question questionnaire. It was quite a questionnaire. And we are so grateful and honored to have received over 400 responses. And without those patients taking the time to share their intimate life information about living with sarcoidosis and some of these barriers, this never would have happened. And so, I hope that the patients listening, that when we do send surveys out, and we'll be sending more surveys out, that this is an opportunity for us as a community, right, to learn the significant changes that can come about from these surveys. And really, I think, John, the hope that it provides for those who are taking the time to fill out the survey when they're doing it, right, this could lead to significant change for myself, for my family, for future people who are diagnosed with sarcoidosis, and quite frankly, and as a representative in this case with this award, for the entire nation, because this involves all clinical trials for all research,
Right.
medical research.
Any disease.
Any disease. And no doubt this is going to have a significant positive impact in America on medical research. And yes, the sarcoidosis patients should feel extremely proud of that because they led this initiative. We can only do our jobs by taking the information and putting it together and reporting on it, which is what we do and what we did in this case, right? But I go back to it. It's really the patients who are driving the change by taking the time and understanding how important it is to share their experience and how this can actually be responsible for federal advocacy and for national change in America. Just remarkable. Kudos to all the patients, really.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you some kudos too, because you've created all these channels for engagement, Mary, you and the team. you've done the Global Sarcoidosis Clinic Alliance, which touches people. So you've got all these touchstones all over the place. So people, in my opinion, and they tell me this on the podcast, they feel like they are connected. And when you've got sarcoidosis and there's no one therapy that's been designed to fight this disease, you're looking for reasons to have hope. And the leadership, and particularly you and Trisha, you guys are doing so much to make make it possible to advance the cause and to keep these patients engaged and to give them opportunities to talk to one another, to talk about their problems, to find a good doctor, which can be so hard with sarcoidosis. So all of those things really, really help. So kudos to you and the team as well.
Well, thank you, John, for that. Yes, first of all, the FSR team is just extraordinary. And my co-pilot, Trisha, as you mentioned, just amazing leader. And this we have at FSR, as you were talking a bit about, is it's a very strong spirit of collaboration. We know that sarcoidosis is a rare disease, and it's challenging, right, to get the with all the noise going on in the world, it's really hard to get attention to a small rare disease. And so we recognize that it takes an army. It takes an entire world to make change. And so our spirit is one, as an organization, is one of just collaboration. So collaborating with all the hospitals and institutions across the globe who are treating sarcoidosis patients. In this case, going back to the award, we put together a coalition to transform clinical trials. We have over 40 members leading institutions, pharmaceutical companies, world-renowned bioethicists, just bringing people together to work together to create solutions. Because as you know, at FSR, well, when we started, we had 5 people 5 years ago when I became CEO and Trisha joined shortly after. We now have 18 positions, right? So we've grown, but it's still a very small team to take on and tackle really getting a cure, finding out more about this very complex disease, and getting better care for patients. It takes an army, more than 18 people. So we are honored to be working with the coalition that we put together on those 40 Hill visits and all the work associated with this award. We are thrilled to have the Global Sarcoidosis Clinic Alliance members, which is leading to extraordinary things. And the dedication of these amazing clinicians who work every day to care for sarcoidosis patients, and their collaborative spirit, John, to work together, right? It's not a competitive environment. It's a collective spirit of working together. And that is what is driving such significant change today.
Yeah, I've met or interviewed so many of those clinicians, Dr. Krauser, from Ohio State, of course, and just the most recent one that comes to mind. But so, Mary, I'm just curious. So, the fact that FSR was chosen for this elite group, how does that help us get to the next thing?
That's a great question. So we didn't stop there. We put together, first of all, a new initiative called Champions for Change.
Yeah.
So excited about this new initiative. And I hope everybody is listening. If you're working for a company or your spouse or friends are working for companies, please ask them to join Champions for Change. Champions for Change is an opportunity for any company, organization in America to provide up to one paid day off for leave, or I should say at least one paid day off for leave, for taking time off to enroll in clinical trials. Because if they're covered under the FMLA, which, as I mentioned, they are now covered, their job is protected. This is a step further to help them financially somewhat. But what it also does, John, is it carries into corporate America the conversation and support of those who are willing to give of themselves to enroll in clinical trials. Because look, if you look at corporate America, their biggest asset are the people, right? We're all working, right, for the purpose of the company or of the organization. And we are that entity's greatest asset. So it's an opportunity for these companies to support not only their employees, which is critically important, but also medical research for the entire nation, which ultimately leads to a very healthy organization as
Yeah.
we learn more
Yeah.
about chronic diseases.
Yeah. How about, is there a credibility factor that comes with this? It's like, uh, now that you can say, uh, hey, we won the Rare Voice Award.
I think what
Is
it
there
does
something
is,
out there that's like a
yeah,
legitimizing factor?
for me, what really legitimizes it goes back to, small rare diseases. If you look at them cumulatively, over 10 million people, I believe, is reported living with rare diseases. So not so rare when you take all the rare diseases together, right?
Hmm.
It's impacting just a tremendous amount of people. And I think what it really establishes and again highlights is how we can make change working together, how we can collaborate together, hear from patients. People talk a lot about patient-centered care, right? This is a great example of patient-centered care. It is about learning from the patients directly and not just learning from them, but really listening to them and then figuring out how do we solve this problem that is being reported by the patient's lived experience, right? It's not just understanding the problem, but it's what are we going to do to fix the problem? What does that take? And I think in this example, it's just a great way for other rare disease organizations, hopefully, to think about things maybe a little bit differently about, how can in their communities collaboration, working together, and moving federal policy change in this example, I think is an opportunity for all of us to continue on.
So you can get the government to actually help.
You can actually get the government to help. Congressman Danny Davis, who you know this, John,
Yes.
FSR celebrated our 25th year anniversary, had a big gala in Chicago, just wonderful. And Congressman Danny Davis won one of the FSR awards
Yeah.
for his amazing leadership on this. Very passionate about what we were doing at FSR with this FMLA change and driving change for patients with breaking down barriers for clinical trials. And so, yes, and that's what makes such a difference when we have the coalitions that are working on these policy changes through these relationships that you develop on Capitol Hill with your representatives who really are passionate also about making change and how they can champion a cause like this that helps drive it over the finish line.
Yeah.
We're convinced after the 40 congressional Hill visits that the coalition did with FSR, that's when we heard back from the Department of Labor. And there's definitely a connection there. Representatives were hearing the message and really advocating for this change and this clarification by the Department of Labor. And again, just a great representation of what that kind of work can lead to.
Got it. Well, you sent out a an email to those of us on the board of directors saying we just won this big award. Click here, watch the video, and then you watch the video and you see there were four awardees. So that was when I first found out. Did you have to watch the video to find out, or did you get a phone call or a letter or somebody behind the scenes says, you might want to pay attention to your email today? How
Yeah.
how did that go down for you?
Yes. No, quite a while ago, we did receive notification from Every Life Foundation that
Okay.
we were, first of all, that we were one of the finalists, and then we weren't sure whether or not we're going to get the award, but we made it to the finalists along with many other organizations, and then eventually got the word from Every Life that we were one of the recipients of the award. And then they said that they wanted to interview us to talk about this award so that they could put, and I love the way they did that. Wasn't that exciting to see the
Was. Yeah.
video
Yeah.
with the awardees who were on there with very brief video synopsis of the work that was done. So love that. But yes, we heard it would, the announcement before would formally come out with the video sometime in late February or I'm sorry, late January or early February.
Got it. So now you're headed back to Capitol Hill. February 24th through the 26th? Is that right?
Yes, very excited to head back there. We have many sarcoidosis patients who are going to be on Capitol Hill with us, meeting with our members of Congress again, and then participating in this amazing panel of awardees with all of the groups that are there, rare disease groups that are there for Rare Disease Week. Very exciting.
Well, let's hope that the members of Congress um, don't just see this as another group coming through, that they listen, and that you get the ear of at least two or three more of our representatives, and that just makes it that much easier to, whether it's funding, whether it's research, whether it's FMLA, whatever it is that we need to get accomplished to make it easier for patients to get treatment and easier for researchers to do their jobs, and the National Institutes of Health. And I just see this like just starting to snowball. That's what it feels like to me, is that it's snowballing.
Absolutely. The momentum continues to build every day with this collaborative spirit, with the patients, with the clinicians. Our scientific advisory board, this, world-renowned experts on sarcoidosis. Also, a very big part of this, interviews from the clinician standpoint. We had, a clinician who was Dr. Ennis James, who
Yeah,
did a podcast with you, actually, John, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Talking about how much of a difference this made. And he had a real life story about a woman who was in a clinical trial with him, who came to him and said, "I'm sorry, I'm going to have to exit out of the trial because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job." And he knew about this work, and he said, "No, you're not. Your job is now covered under FMLA," and she was able to stay in the trial. So sharing these real life stories from clinicians who are trying to, again, to move the needle forward for sarcoidosis and do important research. So important to have that story and to have that information and to have those stories on Capitol Hill as well.
Great. Well, Mary, is there anything else you want to add before we move on?
I just want to say again, thank you so much to the patients. Thank you to the community that we're collaborating with. Thank you to the Coalition to Transform Clinical Trials. Thank you, John. This is really a fantastic platform, because the challenge now is for us is to get this word out to everyone in America. And again, with a lot of noise taking place in the world today, it really is challenging to get this information to all of the people in America, all the clinicians, all of the patients. And your platform, congratulations, that recently received over 100,000 downloads, John. You're really helping us amplify this important message today, and just so thrilled that you were willing to bring this to one of your podcasts to highlight, because it really does help get this amazing news out to everybody. So thank you, John.
Yeah, well, let's thank the listeners, because they're the ones that consume this and think it's got value and so forth. And I'm just the conduit. So, but absolutely. Well, Mary, thank you so much again for all you do and for all your success. And have a little bit of fun when you're up in DC in late February.
Absolutely. We'll definitely do that. And we're just grateful to those who can attend. And we'll be sharing some information after the event with the community. And thank you, everybody, for your ongoing support and everything that everybody's doing collectively to advance sarcoidosis. Thank you.
I feel like a zombie, just feeding and stumbling.
All right, I mentioned in my interview with Mary that video where the winners were announced, and I'll link it in the show notes with this podcast. It's really a nice announcement, and then there are 3 other winners announced as well, one of which is a young girl with another rare disease, and honestly, it escapes me. I watched that video 4 or 5 days ago, but this young girl, I think, is always going to stick with me. She is a force, also very deserving, and she is the spokesperson for her disease. And if nothing else, you might want to watch the video just to see her. Okay, I'm just going to leave it there at that. Thanks again to Mary for taking the time to join me on a cold, snowy morning here in Virginia. For me, in West Virginia. For Mary, she lives in the mountains in West Virginia near a couple of ski slopes, so she's at a higher elevation, and I'm sure it was colder and snowier for her. And we will both be very, very glad to see spring arrive if it ever does this year. And thank you also for letting me share the story of my mom, and I'll put a link to her obituary in the podcast as well. And I also you can also see it on my Facebook page, my personal Facebook page, which is John Carlin. Okay, this is a good time to contact me if you want to share your story on the podcast, carlinagency@gmail.com. The official Sark Fighter song is Zombie by Mark Steyer and his band, and Mark is a fellow Sark Fighter. The podcast comes out every other Monday. As I'm speaking today, my trusty dogs Dougal and Shandy are cheating on me because, once again, Mary is home, my wife Mary, and she's in her office doing some accounting work, and they like her couch better than the chair in my office because there's no way they like her better than me, right? That just can't be. If you're new here and you're trying to figure out what sarcoidosis is, go back and listen to episode 2 with Dr. Simon Hart. My story is episode 1. Again, please send me an email. It's in the show notes, carlinagency@gmail.com. And until next time, keep fighting.
Learn to suffer, you feel pain someday. Learn endurance, your strength will fade away. Dead man walking, trying to keep up the pace. Dead man walking.